we did one last year, and this is the second one we've done, and we're hoping that the council want to continue doing it. So to celebrate obviously all the armed forces across the country, celebrating in the day itself. So we put on this wonderful event today.
There was a sense from a lot of people that this was an opportunity for a big celebration. So of course for Quakers there can never be a celebration of war, memory or current or in any way, because for us war can never be anything other than colossal failure, and World War I was failure on an immense scale.
You've done exceptionally well. Second time in front of the public, you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot surprised how many sort of teenagers there are here getting involved in doing the various things, the cannon run and stuff that was happening a minute ago.
One thing that I was really pleased about was the amount of young people involved in doing these things, like the gun display and the majorettes that were just there. And there's a lot of negative press about how young people aren't doing their bit, as it were. But days like this, it shows that is actually wrong. There is loads of young people out there with a really good kind of sense of community and a sense of, just mucking in like we did in the good old days.
During the centenary of World War I, there were teachers who felt quite uncomfortable about the simplistic messages that were happening about World War I, and the sense that it wasn't being used as a learning experience for young people. It was being used for a more political agenda.
Are you seriously considering a career in the armed services?
Yeah, definitely.
And what is it that particularly appeals to you about?
Not necessarily the shooting, more like the fieldcraft sort of aspect of things, because it gives you more responsibilities, and I just really enjoy it. Like, I enjoy the weaponry, I enjoy the knowledge that you get, and everything. It's just quite a good experience.
Years ago, before, not in our day obviously, I'm too young, but they used to have to go in, didn't they, to the forces? So, and I think that I think they should bring that back.
It's a good idea when you see it in other countries where they have, by law, they have to have like a year's conscription sort of thing to get them used to military training, because then if there is ever the need for a conflict, then obviously they're ready. But also just in their daily life, I think it does have a good positive effect upon how they live their lives on a daily basis.
In wars throughout history, it's often been the most vulnerable people, the people with the least social capital, who end up actually on the front lines fighting. And that's a trend we see today as well, because we know that the advertising for the armed forces today targets people from lower socioeconomic brackets, from poorer parts of the country geographically. So that kind of economic recruitment is more sophisticated now than ever. And so when there are these inputs to young people that do make war or the military look exciting and look uncritically benign, that is going to influence them in the same way any advert can influence.
Yeah, you do see a lot of adverts on TV. It's sort of very heavily advertised, sort of joining either any of the armed services, and it's always sort of glorified. For the Navy, it's like, you get to see all different parts of the world. For the Army, you get to be sort of part of a community, and it's never, really seen as something that is potentially, that could like cause a lot of pain to people, cause like suffering. It's always glorified. No, you see sort of weaponry and arms sort of being fired, but you never see anybody being hurt by them. It's always, seen as portrayed as sort of being cool and, something that is desirable to do.
There are adverts saying born in somewhere, made in the Royal Navy, and they could be doing the same thing as when World War I happened, where they told people it was like a community and they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. So possibly that could be happening again.
Young people making their decisions, say, between the ages of 15 and 21, neurologically are going to be susceptible to certain kinds of message, and the messages of adventure, of being with a group of friends, of excitement, that's the kind of thing that is going to sound wonderful to them.
You definitely get to understand how heavy it is, the fact it's not as simple as everyone thinks. Oh, shoot someone, they're dead. Oh wow, I'm in the army now. It's more, you have to learn everything, you have to learn characteristics of the rifle, everything about the rifle, and then you kind of get to shoot it, but it's not all about killing and guns and everything like people always assume it is.
If we're doing an act of remembrance, it should be surely to learn from history, to learn from the past, but instead it becomes a ritualised event, and ritual in a society is a way of reinforcing behaviours, of reinforcing beliefs.
I mean, nothing's ever going to really be perfect. There's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be petty little arguments. Someone's always going to be in the wrong, and someone's always going to be there to be the sort of like narcissistic person they are.
I don't agree with wars, but wars do happen, I'm afraid, and it's part of life as we know it today, like, you know.
I think it creates a sense of wars being inevitable rather than the message of never again, which we seem to lose along the way.
I think that we have to remember the women and children who also died of hunger and being bombed and things like that, and also the people from other countries who got invaded. I think that's very important as well, because it's not just the soldiers but the other people as well.
They don't remember the civilians and the people of the other countries. It's more people were hurt that were civilians than actual armed forces.
I mean, there was some, bizarre, absurd white poppy movement,
yes,
which I think has fizzled out. Some sort of pacifist.
It's a bit meaningless, isn't it? Because you wear a white poppy. We all support peace, don't we?
It's never been really tried. We've never really dared to try it, but I really don't. Being a realist, I think if we'd have just laid down and done absolutely nothing in 1939.
Something like World War II, where Hitler was killing sort of millions of people at a time, I think then it is justified that we should go and fight and try and prevent that, because, that's like evil.
Different countries and the governments could discuss it and could find a way to not cause war and not cause all that destruction and death. So I think they can, work it out.
Peace is absolutely possible. It happens all the time. It happens in lots of ways and in lots of layers, that you can resolve conflicts without resort to violence, that there are ways of engaging with people, and that it's a very stimulating and exciting thing to do, to work well, cooperatively.
We need to ask what it is that we're actually going to war for, and why we're going to war over. And it started all back with Tony Blair and the business with the oil in Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction and all this sort of thing.
Even if it is to fight weapons of mass destruction, there has to be proof, because they did the same thing with Iraq, and millions of people protested against it. They went ahead with it. They killed the president. They went and searched the country, and there were no WMDs, and they had no justification for that war whatsoever.
Generally, I have noticed that there is a bit of a change in the attitude towards war. Maybe there might be other ways of addressing conflict rather than actually sending young people to go off and die for the sake of governments to earn money from each other and arms deals and that sort of thing. Because a lot of that, thanks to the freedom of the press and social media, there is a lot more of that coming out into the open now about, sometimes it's not about territory, sometimes it's not about freedom of people, it's purely about money changing hands, oil, and being able to sell guns to another country with impunity.
With all these new weapons, there'd be much more death on a wider scale.
Everyone knows more than they did, obviously, in the First World War. News spreads much more quickly, so they know what they're getting into. So everyone would be a lot more apprehensive of joining if they knew that 6 million people were going to die.
Well, I think there would be less people because they know that what can happen, like the devastating things that can happen if they go to war, because they can get hurt. Lots of families will get hurt, and obviously they won't have as much enthusiasm because they already know what's going to come.
British military spending has increased in recent budgets. So the outcome, the agenda of the United Kingdom, if you're just looking at it objectively from the outside, is more militaristic. It's promoting more war and military intervention around the world. That, if you're in any other country, that is the demeanour of the United Kingdom. It is an aggressive posture.
We're here to say stop hiding behind the rhetoric of pretending this is about deterrence. We should call it how it is. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. And that's why we say so loudly and clearly that in seeking to replace our nuclear weapons, this government is in breach of international law. We say stop Trident now.